Welcome one and all to another episode of The Damage Report on the day when the January 6 hearings return. I will be covering that later on, but we've got a lot to focus on this show, and thankfully we come equipped with contributor Rebel HQ, Jackson White. Welcome back to the show.
Man, what's going on? It's always good to be here with you. And well, like we was talking about before, I think we're gonna have a bit of a fun day for sure.
Yeah, it's we got some important stuff to talk about, but I would classify the show mostly as just fun stuff to talk about. We're gonna lighten up a little bit. In a couple of hours, we're gonna be diving into, the plot to overthrow democracy. So it's gonna get serious and everything. But can we have a little bit of fun, America?
We have to.
Is that allowed?
We have to.
We're gonna be talking about scandals and billion-dollar fines and a whole bunch of stuff. Actually, unfortunately, we're not going to be talking about the incel today.
Maybe we can weave it into some interesting context around that, just in terms of online spaces, and echo chambers, and things like that. But
I apologize. You know what? Maybe during one of the social breaks, we can dive into it a little bit.
Okay, maybe. Perhaps.
I want to hear your thoughts.
All right.
But we're going to be talking about Christopher Columbus and Herschel Walker's ancestry. Is John Fetterman a robot? Tucker Carlson is just asking questions. So we've got that and a lot more coming up on the show, in the full show, the aftermath and all that. In advance of that though, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that would be great. And you can send us comments, tweets, and super chats, and we'll respond as we go. But with all that said, Jackson, are you ready to start the show?
Yes, sir, let's do it.
Let's do it, okay. Bit of bad news for Donald Trump when it comes to the document scandal at Mar-a-Lago. The DOJ apparently has an employee of his who has been working with them and revealing some bombshells, including the main one, which is that he told federal agents, he or she, we don't know, probably he, that Donald Trump told him to move boxes of documents at Mar-a-Lago. Specifically, it was Donald Trump that said that. And specifically, this came after multiple rounds of the National Archives and other related bodies trying to get back the classified documents. So in response to that, he specifically told his employees to move documents to his residence to try to hide them away. You cannot claim that you're not breaking the law when you're specifically trying to cover up the evidence that you're breaking the law. But let's give you all of what we know at this point. So told federal agents about this. This is direct from the employee. The employee is cooperating with the Justice Department, has been interviewed multiple times already by federal agents. And people familiar with the ongoing investigation say that agents have gathered witness accounts indicating that after Trump advisors received a subpoena back in May for any classified documents that remained at Mar-a-Lago, Trump told people, you gotta get the boxes out of there. You gotta get them somewhere that they won't be able to find them. And apparently it isn't just the multiple witnesses saying that. They have security camera footage showing people moving the boxes. That's according to these sources. Now, what's interesting is that this main witness that's driving so much of this news coverage today initially denied handling sensitive documents or the boxes that might contain such documents. But as the investigation gathered more evidence, they decided to re-interview this witness. And once they presented the evidence they had, the witness was like, oh, you said classified. I thought you said grassified. Oh no, I did handle classified documents. Suddenly the story changed, and that's when they admitted that they had been moving these boxes. And what is even more damning is that that's that one main person, but there are apparently multiple people working with the DOJ. Multiple witnesses have already told the FBI that they tried to talk Trump into cooperating with the NARA investigation and the DOJ, but he just wasn't having it. Like they would not listen to his attempts to get him to comply with the law. And he apparently in particular grew angry this spring after a House Oversight Committee investigation was launched, telling aides they'd screwed up the situation. They're my documents, Trump said, according to an aide who spoke with him. And I don't know, is the aide one of the witnesses that they're already talking about? Is it that main employee? Are there 15 different people working with the DOJ? I don't know, but what seems to be the case, both with Christina Bobb, Trump lawyer, who we've been talking about for the last week or so, and then this person is, these are not Stephanie Grishams or whatever. These are not people who are like looking to stick it to Trump. They initially defended him. But then once you start presenting evidence that they've now implicated themselves, or they might be implicated in breaking the law, then suddenly they're kind of forced to work against Donald Trump. And that's the position that he put them in. Jackson, what do you think?
So, hindsight is such an interesting thing because Trump is like, basically a giant goiter on the forehead of the GOP. And even Lindsey Graham himself said if we embrace him fully, he's going to end up destroying us. But at the same time, I don't really see how he was avoidable because Obama stirred up the country in such a way that led to the possibility of Trump. And now Trump, he's so toxic, and yet Ron DeSantis isn't quite ready to replace him. It's like the Republicans need to gear somebody else up. Politically, they just have to, and they know it. But they can't, and they're dealing with a guy who basically his lifelong history of criminality and just being a scandalous, low-life person is catching up to him. The literally over $1 billion that he owes to people, him just having people work themselves out of business because he doesn't pay them, all the lawsuits against him from New York. Now he's gonna have to go and sit in when what's her name, E. Jean Carroll, the columnist. He has to go in for deposition and testify under oath. And he's just becoming such an issue that really, from my perspective, I don't really see him being able to beat anybody in a general election, especially when you have a Biden administration that, while we would have liked to see him go further on many things, is delivering, versus a Republican Party that's running 1,000,000 miles an hour in the wrong direction. So it's like they have to replace him, but with who?
I hope you're right.
I hope so too. We'll see. I hope so too.
Let's also, I'm going to add on to that the Republican strategy, if they are to take over the midterms, is not to pass anything, which would be difficult anyway with Biden as president. It's to just make everything as bad as possible, because the idea then is that Biden will look bad or whatever other Democrat will look bad. The Democrats will look bad. But the issue is that right now, when things get bad, they can say, well, we have no control over it, which isn't 100% true, but it's partially true. But they're going to be in control. Like, I know that they won't be in the White House, but they will be in control. It's a dangerous strategy. And I'm glad, by the way, that you mentioned E. Jean Carroll. I saw that Trump was bleeding about it on Truth Social.
I didn't get to catch up with that. I'm glad that you about to, yeah.
So he had a long post about her, referring to her. He wouldn't say her name initially. He just called her the name of the place she alleges he raped her. And then he says, and I cannot believe, no, why can't I believe this? Why at this point can I believe this? That he
right,
says,
John, come on, John.
I know I'm not supposed to say this, but she's not my type. So he has an advisor who is willing to risk his wrath to tell him, okay, buddy, it looks really bad when you say the reason I didn't rape someone was I wasn't turned on enough by them, and yet he's still gonna say it again. But anyway, that's a separate scandal. We'll return to that, I'm sure. I just want to mention one other thing when it comes to this document scandal, because the evidence has been evolving, and that's been fascinating, but the explanations have also been evolving, and that's maybe even more fascinating. So I want you to take a look at the statement from Taylor Budowich, Trump spokesperson, about these new allegations, which of course make them look absolutely terrible. So the first part is fairly rote, it's boilerplate. The Biden administration has weaponized law enforcement and fabricated a document hoax in a desperate attempt to retain political power. He's not making any specific claims there. It's very vague, whatever. But then he goes on to say, every other president has been given time and deference regarding the administration of documents, as the president has the ultimate authority to categorize records and what materials should be classified. Do you see what he's doing there? Like, maybe it's not clear, or maybe it's clear, I don't know. So they were implying for a long time that these documents could be classified. And then everyone and their mother was like, so did you declassify them? And they refused to say. Now they're saying, hey, don't be mean to us. We get to have them for a couple of years before deciding whether they should be classified. That is a fairly explicit retreat from their previous defense. Not only are they not making specific claims that they declassified, but they're trying to set up this weird situation where they don't even have to decide whether to declassify them for literally years, even though notably ex-presidents can't classify or declassify literally anything. And so that I haven't seen many people focusing on that statement, but that seems like a pretty big retreat on one of their core, if hypothetical, defenses.
So it's just incredible how stupid Trump is. That's just how I'm gonna close this out, because you just a simple phrase that you said coming into this. He said, "They're my documents." That's how he and the entire GOP sees the world. And it's just I know we didn't specifically cover the E. Jean Carroll here, but I know I'm not supposed to say this. If she was hotter, then maybe we'd be talking about something. I mean, look at her. It's just. But again, it's like you said. Hopefully this doesn't. No, I'm not even gonna say hopefully. We got to beat these people, man. We got to beat these people.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, and look, we can't say for sure exactly what happened with E. Jean Carroll. It certainly doesn't sound good, and it becomes a little bit easier to take her word on it when her word are words that are surrounded by the words of dozens of other women who have made similar claims about sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape, all sorts of different things.
Yeah, for me, it's just on top of that. For me, it's just ultimately all of this stuff piling on. It can't help him at this point. It just can't. And I think that there's just a lot of room for especially progressives, younger generations, to continue to have little wins that do count, especially at a smaller, more local level. But even in the elections coming ahead, because that big red wave, just because of the series of events that have happened, I'm not convinced.
It's
about
blunted
that at
it.
all. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it has blunted it. I still worry about them taking over potentially both houses, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I do want to give people a little bit of a preview of what's going to be going on with the January 6th hearing. So why don't we jump into that? It is actually. No, wow, look at it. Is that Craig? Is that Skip? Is that Mark? You were so quick on the trigger there. I like it. It has been actually a couple of months since the last round of January 6th hearings. I know it felt like it was just yesterday, but it was back in July. And a lot has happened since then. I mean, at that point, we didn't know anything about the document scandals and all that. Things develop quickly. And there's reason to believe that they might be developing when it comes to this investigation as well. Although I would temper your expectations for really explosive testimony. That's what I would say. There might well be interesting evidence presented today, but you should understand that there's going to be some limitations in comparison to past hearings. But let's dive into what we know currently about what we can expect. The focus thematically is going to be on the president's state of mind and his involvement in these events as they unfolded. So his involvement in the events, that's of course important. We want to know exactly what he did, what he didn't do, what the timeline was. But I actually find that line about his state of mind to be pretty fascinating, because there's currently no plans to have Donald Trump testify. So bear that in mind. So how exactly are they going to get to his state of mind other than through talking with people who were around him on January 6th? I guess telepathy is a possibility, but outside of telepathy, only talking with people who were with him on that day would be able to provide that information. And so hopefully we will get some of that. Now they say there aren't going to be any live witnesses at today's hearing, but there would be video testimony and documentary evidence that hasn't been seen before. I am assuming that video testimony is pre-recorded. I assume that when they say live, they don't just mean in person. This must be stuff that they've been doing through the last few months. And bear in mind, there could be new evidence coming from witnesses that will not be live, but will still be relevant. For instance, cabinet secretaries like Mike Pompeo, Steve Mnuchin, Elaine Chao, referred to recently by the former most powerful person in the world as Coco Chao. Jesus, hopefully she's been a little bit more willing to cooperate following that ridiculous racist attack. And anyway, they do say that since the last set of hearings, they've received more than 1 million communications from the Secret Service from the lead up to the riot, as well as new material, new emails, and new video that has been handed over. And so it's not necessarily gonna be live. There's not gonna be any like live gotchas to totally like change things up, but there could be video. There's been non-live video that's really significant in the past, including Josh Hawley booking it through the hallway to get away before fist bumping or whatever. And so I don't know exactly what to expect. I am hoping that they have some people that were very close to Donald Trump on that day that can provide a little bit of information about his state of mind. But Jackson, what do you think?
Yeah, hopefully so, because again, like you said, it's not like he's going to testify, because that would be the biggest disaster in history. But I think that what's really interesting is that despite the seriousness of January 6th, despite people literally running into the heart of the nation, and despite the fact that we're covering this here, and it's not like this is overlooked, it's kind of like an type of issue. You know what I mean? Like people going into the elections, I don't really see this impacting them that much. Now, not to say that this doesn't add to, that giant pile that Trump is dealing with in terms of his toxic baggage. However, people going into the midterms and the 2024 election, they're going to be thinking about the economy, inflation. Saudi Arabia just did what they did with gas prices, and that's really what the Democrats are going to have to address. Although obviously we want to see accountability on this end, this is not something I believe that the Democrats should really zero in on too much in terms of how they want to take office going forward.
Yeah, I suppose. And look, I've said all along that the longer these things get dragged out, the more difficult it is for people to understand or perhaps remember why it was so significant. I mean, the issue is that Donald Trump wanted a mob to kill Mike Pence and overthrow the results of an election, which now we're a year and a half away from. So it seems less significant, but the issue is that he's not any less likely to inspire another riot in the future, unfortunately. Although I would say the part of it that I'm more immediately worried about is another level removed from the sort of thing that you're saying, which would be, remember, they already got people into a whole bunch of positions of power in state elections boards, state secretaries of state. They're continuing to do that. They've already changed the voting laws in a number of states. All of that is baked in at this point. And there's no big investigations, there's no big testimony. It already happened. They've already done this. When we talk about the results of the midterms, remember, they already did a whole bunch of their insane partisan redistricting. That's already baked in to what the distribution of power in the House of Representatives is going to be in a couple of months. And this is how it works. They do insane radical things, and unless people freak out immediately, you can get used to literally anything. It is now harder to vote in multiple states, particularly in the South, than it was. And we just have to accept that now. There's no big freaking out about it. It's just gonna be harder. It's gonna affect the midterms. It's gonna affect 2024. It's fun. It's really fun living in America when such terrible things can be normalized on such a routine basis.
Yeah, and I think that really just goes to show the impact of culture, because when unions were stronger, when the working class was stronger in this country, the culture was different in terms of people going to bat and where the power was in organization. And now, we're just kind of used to the government being corrupted. We're just kind of used to things happening, and so much is piled up. The role reversal, that's so big. And then too, just, us being so oversaturated with so much content of all kinds, all the time. And then Donald Trump as president, really opening up Pandora's box to, at least in this political era, things like decorum and being cordial just really don't matter as much as they would. So, it's just the times that we're in right now.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, well, we're gonna take our first break. When we come back, Alex Jones had to face the results of another one of his many trials that he's embroiled in, and we're gonna give you his response after this. Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on out there. First of all, you had mentioned earlier about how ridiculous he is, how childish, how much he's destroyed of everything. So I was scrolling through his True Central this morning, trying to see if he'd commented on that story that we talked about the documents and his employee and everything, and he hadn't yet, which probably tells you something. But he had commented on the Utah Senate race. He's talking about Mike Lee, who he supports, and Evan McMullin, who he does not. And he has apparently come up with a nickname for Evan McMullin. And I'm gonna put it out there to you, Jackson, if you want, and to the audience. Can you guess? Can you guess what Donald Trump has nicknamed Evan McMullin? I'm gonna give you a hint.
Or something like that. Evan McMullin.
You got it in one, Jackson.
Yes. Oh my God. I'm just clairvoyant. I'm just like Kanye West right now. My brilliance just shines through. How did I know that?
100%. And by the way,
he's so stupid.
Also guessed it.
He's so stupid.
McMuffin.
Oh God.
Why not? Man. And
yeah,
like he literally, by the end of the statement, he was just referring to him as McMuffin. McMuffin said that he would.
That's gonna stick though. But you know that's gonna stick.
But McMuffins are delicious.
They are.
Is that really a bad thing?
You know what?
McMuffin?
You know, now I'm zeroing in on the fact that I am hungry, and so we just let him steal that. Nah, man.
Yeah, I don't know. There's no bad publicity. Like I now want to eat a McMuffin, and I kind of want to go get $28 worth of Taco Bell. That's just how the news works.
Yeah, man. You never know what's gonna go.
Exactly. I also still want a Choco Taco. That wound is still raw. Anyway, let's see what's going on out there. Mina the Singing Dragon, member for 4 months on YouTube, says, Jackson, milk is gross, but love your manosphere content. Also, hey, John. What's going on with the milk?
I'm just a strange guy, and I think I'm hilarious, and I'll just tweet out random things like Cheetos, lasagna, milk, and then like people have their opinions about milk. Some people think we shouldn't drink it, and I'll be like, don't go ruining my milk for me, man. I like my milk. You know what I mean? So
I appreciate good milk.
Exactly, man. And I appreciate you if you don't like it, but don't come ruining my milk for me. And my manosphere content is me basically just breaking down the realities of the religion of Red Pill and how much influence it really has. And I make fun of those guys. And then they see my content and they come after me, but I'm like the epitome of what they wish they were. And I'm not on their side, so it's hilarious.
Yeah, like, you're supposed to be a soy boy. It frustrates me that you're not.
You're supposed to hate women. Like, okay.
I know. They believe that like you can only be in a satisfying, like mature relationship if you absolutely despise women. And I don't think that's how it works generally. But anyway.
Possibly not, but hopefully they'll grow out of it at some point.
Yeah. Okay. Monica Childers, welcome to Turin membership over on YouTube. Glad to have you here. Muscly Ginger Lover Dragon has been a member for 5 months and says, happy Thursday, John and Jackson. Nice to see Jackson for sure. Just FYI, John, you'll always be my favorite host. Oh, I love the way that this message is going. So grateful for your take on the news, your compassion and genuine goodness. Thank you so much. That was very nice of you. Okay, let's see. May Money to Building says, Jackson, I joined the Dirty 30 Club with you 2 days ago. Potty over here, it's going down. Sorry, John.
Okay, yes indeed. I'm glad I'm in the Dirty 30 Club. You know what I'm saying? It's going well so far. So let's keep it going.
Let's do it. Okay, everybody, let's jump back into some news. Alex Jones already owes tens of millions of dollars to the families that have suffered for years because of his intentional lying for profit about what happened at Sandy Hook. But that turns out to be nothing in comparison to what he now owes. Take a look at him in real time responding to the judgment.
To plaintiff Robbie Parker, A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $60 million.
Yeah.
B, emotional distress damages past and future, total $120 million.
Yeah.
Initialed by juror number 1.
Yeah.
To plaintiff David Wheeler, A, $30 million.
Yeah.
Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff $55 million.
Yeah.
Initials.
Never said their name, don't know who they are.
He seems nice. So look, that's him having fun. He's a genuine lunatic. So what did you expect? He was going to take it seriously with some dignity or something? But admittedly, it is still a lot of money. Like he can cheer in the moment, but $1 billion so far is gonna hurt. I haven't run the numbers on exactly how many jars of powdered gorilla bone you need to sell or how many Instahard pills you need to hawk before you can pay for $1 billion, but it's gonna be a few of them. And he did at some point seem to understand the financial pressure he's gonna be under, saying, this must be what hell's like. They just read out the damages even though you don't got the money. Well, look, do I think he has $1 billion? No, I do not believe that he has $1 billion. Does he have many millions of dollars? Yes, unfortunately, he has many millions of dollars that he has gotten by doing things like defaming the families of the survivors of mass shootings. And he's got a private jet, and look, he has money that he is going to have to part with. He doesn't want to. He plans to appeal the verdict. He also suggested, by the way, that he may not pay anyway, even without an appeal. Do these people actually think they're getting any of this money? He also warned that being sued would not stop him from spreading conspiracy theories. They want to scare us away from questioning Uvalde or Parkland. We're not going away. We're not going to stop. So just, in case you were wondering if all of his legal travails of the last few years have gotten him to take this a little bit more seriously, or if you believe that he just okay, he said it and it was wrong, but it was just his free speech, it's not that bad. Even after $1 billion in judgment, he is still spreading lies about mass shootings. He's doing it to keep his audience so he can sell them dick pills so he can stay a millionaire. Let's be very clear about every step of this process. He already owed $45 million. And by the way, there's another trial coming up later this year in Texas that could put it well past 1 billion. Jackson, what do you think?
Well, I think it's fascinating in a few ways. And what I mean is, I think Alex Jones it just shows the power of tapping into stimulus of the lizard brain, basically. Being charismatic, being loud, being boisterous, being entertaining, especially in modern day America, such that even though I remember the very first time that I came across Alex Jones, he had on a lizard mask or a horse mask of some kind. But again, just like it's entertaining. And again, obviously he did horrible things with it, but I'm saying that to really point to how he made his money. He's just entertaining. That's all it is. And unfortunately, he caused a lot of damage with his ability to greatly entertain people. Now, I don't think that he has $1 billion either. However, this is definitely a giant middle finger to InfoWars, everything that it stands for. This definitely is, he's not just going to be able to not pay any of that money whatsoever. On top of the fact that, as you pointed out, Alex Jones is nuts, and he's not he's crazy, and he's not taking this well. I mean, who would take being issued $1 billion fine well for something like this? The most avoidable thing in history. It's not like he was like, oh, I woke up and I stubbed my toe and then all of this happened. Like, he did this for years. He tripled down for years. So, it's just, the reality is that Alex Jones deserves this. And he's not going to help himself as time continues to move forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the most important thing you said is that he knew. It wasn't that he just did it. He knew and he kept doing it. And I want to transition now to that, about the severity and extent of this. I know some people are probably very familiar with the ins and outs of this going back literally years. Others probably are not. So let's talk about that. But we're going to frame it around responding to a different sort of bad actor who also has a history of spreading conspiratorial nonsense. Marjorie Greene, of course, is going to defend Alex Jones facing this massive $1 billion fine. But take a look at how she chooses to defend him. She says, no matter what you think of Alex Jones, all he did was speak words. He was not the one who pulled the trigger. Were his words wrong? And did he apologize? Yes. Well, half yes, to be clear. That's what freedom of speech is. Freedom to speak words. Political persecution must end. So there's a lot that's conflated. And of course, there's gonna be her mind is Swiss cheese with the holes being drilled on a daily basis by a variety of different sorts of worms. That's the best that she can do, but we're gonna try to break it down and respond to it. Did he pull the trigger? No, he of course did not pull the trigger. But to be clear, he doesn't think that anyone pulled the trigger. Can we be clear about that? He thinks it was made up. He thinks these kids literally didn't exist. So if you're gonna defend him, at least be specific about what exact speech you're defending, Marjorie Greene. You don't want to be, though. You're cowardly. You want to be very vague about it because you don't want to implicate yourself, particularly when you have repeatedly implied that mass shootings and other forms of mass violence are false flags, that they don't actually exist. But does he have freedom of speech? Yes, he does. Does freedom of speech mean whatever Marjorie Greene wants it to? No, it has specific meanings and specific limitations. Defamation is one of those limitations, particularly when the defamation can be very reliably, predictably linked to harassment and threats against those people. And when you repeatedly do it multiple times after being warned about the effect of what you're doing. And bear in mind, she tries to apologize for all this, saying he apologized, which he technically briefly did. But if you buy that apology, you're probably a viewer of Alex Jones, because he has repeatedly since then said that he doesn't believe that the shooting was real. One of the survivors of this, or I believe a family member survivor, responded to Marjorie Greene saying, "Did you also miss him doubling down, saying that the shooting looked synthetic as we were in court for this trial?" No, she ignores that. Of course she ignores that. She doesn't care that, as Ruben Gallego points out, defamation is very much not protected speech. And just to be clear, one might expect her to understand that the defamation part of this when she has repeatedly threatened to sue people for things they said about her. She tweeted right here, "Defamation of character is a serious issue. Perhaps if Democrats keep lying about Republicans like Representative Loudermilk and others, they should be taken to court." Well, why should they be taken to court? They didn't pull a trigger, Marjorie Greene. They only said words, and that's freedom of speech. No, of course she understands. She wants freedom of speech for her and for people like Alex Jones to say literally anything they want for personal profit, even if it causes mass predictable suffering. And then when they get criticized, they want to immediately run to the courts, or at least imply that they're going to. Like Herschel Walker with the abortion allegations, they will often say that they're going to bring someone to court, but they very much don't want the process of discovery in a courtroom to make them look even worse, so they don't often actually do it. But Jackson, what do you think?
So, you really just nailed it on the head in terms of, for me, but not for thee. But just how hollow and in your face it really is, whether it be defending Alex Jones or people like, for anyone who's familiar with like the Andrew Tates of the world who get deplatformed, or, just their fight is so hollow and so stupid. My right to say destructive things that literally lead to other people being harmed and being hurt, which of course is not something that's legally protected whatsoever. When platforms like Twitter, which are businesses that have audiences and they have responsibilities, when they decide to, maybe temporarily suspend somebody for, spreading false information that could impact people's health, and things along those lines. No, I have a right to do that. I have a right to be stupid, basically. And one of the things I've been saying across the networks for the last few weeks is just how, one of the strategies we really need to take is to just not treat these people like they're not serious, because they're not serious. Let's just roll over these people, because, how can you defend someone like Alex Jones? Really? Come on.
They're natural allies. Yeah. And again, just to put a button in this, and then we're gonna have to see if we can roll over her on a couple of other topics. If he had just said it once, it would be reprehensible, but maybe people could move on or whatever. That's not what he did.
Yeah.
He very repeatedly said it about this shooting, about other shootings, knowing about the harassment that was going on, and more importantly, knowing about the money he was making by pushing these lies. He didn't care about the incredible amount of suffering that he was doing. And that's what makes it a thing where, in theory, you can start to suffer legal ramifications. Anyway, with that said, why don't we jump into Greene's thoughts on a few other topics? Jump right in this.
It's a lie. Okay, yeah, climate changes. We already know that. But the agenda is a lie. And so the reason why they're fighting in this war in Ukraine, if you look at the areas where Russia has captured, it is so rich in rare earth minerals. It is. And those people openly say they want to be part of Russia.
Okay, so it might be one thing if Marjorie Greene were to say, "I don't like what Putin and the Russians are doing. I think it's awful. The intentional murder of civilians is terrible, but I am so blindly anti-war that we will just allow it. I don't want us to be involved, so we're not going to be involved." And yes, that means that Ukraine will be conquered, not just the parts that want to be Russian, as if that was some sort of settled topic, but all of it. After all, remember, they were trying to circle Kyiv in the first couple of weeks of the invasion. They want to take over all of Ukraine. That's just a necessary part of us not being involved, so we're not going to be involved. If she were to say that, that would be one thing. But she wants to have her supposed anti-imperialism and eat it too, lying about the status of those territories, lying about the territorial ambitions of Russia. seeming to make the claim that because they're going in there for minerals, that makes it better. Something being a resource war doesn't make it more ethical. I don't even understand what point she's trying to make there. So she almost could have a point, but she, of course, muddies it and apologizes for the mass violence, the intentional killing and torture and rape of civilians. And then she wants to make it even more personal. So let's jump into this.
All about money. It is all about money. And it is a scam in so many ways. And you know what happens, guys? It's the government leaders, they don't suffer. Zelensky has a brand new green t-shirt on every single time you see him do an interview. I mean, that's pretty amazing. Does the man not wear any other color? Come on, we aren't stupid. We understand Hollywood. We're Americans, right? We understand movies and actors.
Okay, so do the political leaders often not suffer in the same way that regular people do? Yes, that's almost certainly true. It also doesn't bother her in the vast majority of cases. After all, I mean, she feels terrible for what happened to the regular insurrectionists on January 6th. She doesn't seem to have a problem with the fact that Donald Trump hightailed it back to his fancy apartment to just watch on TV the violence that he instigated. She seems fine with that. The fact that Donald Trump has a new made in China tie every time he appears doesn't seem to bother her. He's not suffering in the way that regular Americans are. But see, she really betrays herself there. Because again, it would be one thing to just say, I don't want war, so let's not be involved. Or Putin says he's gonna nuke them and I don't want nuclear war, so let's just give him whatever he wants. That would be one thing. But when she has to insult Zelensky's clothing choice, she is not just anti-war, she actively hates the Ukrainian resistance to their own subjugation. It's a personal thing to her. She doesn't just want you to not militarily support Zelensky, she wants you to disdain Zelensky. She wants you to hate Zelensky. And that is a very weird position to take. Jackson.
So I think, first and foremost, I'm sure the audience already knows, but Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't necessarily just say things randomly. She definitely, absolutely is a participant in these online communities where all of these same ideas are circulating. These types of ideas literally drive people to the polls. So she's not isolated in her saying these types of things. And then again, it's also, I have to point out, conservatives are always using things that are not based in reality to define reality. Like, oh, we know Hollywood, we've seen the movies, we know what they do on set because somebody has. What type of shirts is he supposed to have on? Like, is he supposed to come on TV like bruised and battered? Like, what are you talking about? But then, of course, Obama, when he had on, and there's plenty of legitimate things to criticize Obama about, but the tan suit, him using, what was it, mustard on a burger or something like that. Yeah. But again, these aren't isolated comments and thoughts. These are things that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, definitely, if not millions of people, this is circulating people to the polls while they completely ignore everything that actually means something.
Yeah. She has so many followers.
Yeah.
People who look at her and think, not only is she right, but she's great. She's smart, she's wise. I mean, these are, how broken do you have to be? Anyway, let's jump into one more thing that she had to say.
But I always listen to, all these people and say, oh, I'm never, they take my guns, blah, 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 blah. No, you're not. You're not. Stop saying that. Just be real. You're not. Most people would hand them over. And that's the truth. And I hate to say it, but that's the truth. It's terrifying. The government is terrifying. Look at what's happening to these poor January 6 people. None of you want to be in there with them, do you? I know I don't.
Okay, so she hates to say it, that if certain guns were made illegal and the government was to come and try to get them, she hates to say that people would just turn them over. As opposed to what, Marjorie Greene? What's the alternative that you prefer because you hate the implication that they would just hand it over? This is why, like you might think that because they're profane and awful and racist and all that they're strong, like we conflate those things, but they're also incredibly cowardly. I have a challenge for Marjorie Greene. Tell me what you actually mean. Should they shoot the person who comes rather than hand it over? Should they be dragged away to jail? I mean, that might be one implication of what she means. The other would be that she should gun down the government official that comes. So specifically, who should they shoot? The ATF? The FBI? Is it a local cop? The National Guard? Who should these gun owners murder so that they don't have to hand over their guns? Specifically, how many of them should they murder? Should they shoot them in the chest? Should they shoot them in the head? You understand that they will eventually end up being either killed or brought in for murder. So I don't understand how that's supposed to be better for them. But be specific about the political violence that you'd like to have happen. If the law were to change, you believe that gun laws can never be more restrictive than they are right now. There's no legitimate way that any gun could ever be made illegal. What should be done? What should they be willing to kill 100 cops if they show up? Maybe blow up their cop cars. Where exactly should the line be drawn? She wants to make that implication that she would be stronger. You're weak, you'll hand in your guns. She would never hand in her guns. Okay, so what would you do with your gun if they were to come and get it? And of course, this is a massive dodge. There has never been anything like this. They're constantly talking about government agents coming to your house, either take your guns or stick you with a vaccine. It's a complete fantasy. It's like me talking about orcs marching on Cincinnati or something. It has as much grounding in reality, but this is the sort of stuff that they use to get their base to support them.
Yeah, and it's just the absurdity of, that we, the people, stand a chance against the mightiest military the world has ever seen in terms of technology and just how organized they are. Like what? Okay, like you said, we're gonna shoot them when they come to their door. Like it's like people don't realize that if the government was gonna come and take your guns or come after you, they don't even have to come shoot you. They could poison your water supply. They could shut off all of your credit cards and your bank accounts and literally lock you in your house. Anything electronic, they could just like they don't have to do that. Or if they were, they could just like plot some type of like, come kidnap you up out your sleep type of deal. They'll come in, like that's what you're dealing with. So the idea that it's like, come take it if you want to, like okay, or they could literally just nuke you, or it's so stupid.
Strike you.
Yeah, like okay, good luck with that. And then obviously, like she closed it out with the, those poor people on January 6th, because it should be your right to storm into the halls of the heart of the nation to defend Donald Trump, a former game show host who's a failed child, who's ripped everyone off his entire life. It's so saddening. But it's so stupid. It's just so stupid, man.
I agree. You make a great point. How about this? Maybe we can have some bipartisanship here. Okay, maybe Marjorie Greene and us, maybe we can come together. Since you want a future wherein some regular people with AR-15s can fight off the US military, how about we come together and stop giving the US military so much money? Because you realize that you're arming your future enemy in this case. You're giving them the drones and the tanks and all that stuff. How about this? How about let's cut their funding and then maybe you'll have a chance. Can we work together on that? Anyway.
Well, that's rational, so no, we can't.
Probably not, probably not.
No.
Okay, so we're gonna take our second break. When we come back though, Gary Chambers has another ad. And if you've seen his recent ones, it's gonna be fun. So we'll have that for you after this. Okay, let's see. CM just says McConnell equals McClown. He should have gone with McClown rather than broken old crow. I don't even know what that means. I think he was watching Game of Thrones when he came up with that. That's my guess. Anyway, Matthias says, do to him like we do to students, no bankruptcy. Yeah, well, or how about this? Garnishment of wages. Yeah, no, you don't have that money, but you'll make money in the future. And of course, they can't take all of the money. You have to be able to live. You have to be able to like maybe rent a small apartment and be able to afford food like a regular person. But the rest of that, you can make that money and then it will go to pay your obligations to all these victims. How about that? That's how it would work for regular people. That's how it should work for him. Anyway, Lisa Dodson, member for 22 months, says Marge Greene, the angertainment expert, 100%. Domino Dent, welcome to membership. Glad to have you here. Okay, looks like Tree Mubatiki gifted a sub. However, since we're not currently broadcasting to Twitch, I'm assuming that's not related to us. But thank you, Tree, as always, for doing that. Okay, Domino Dent says, is this an admission that the 50 cal and hog hunting ads were Hollywood? I already knew it, but this is great. That is such a great point. I hadn't even remembered that. So Zelensky is mugging for the camera when he puts on a green shirt, but when she wields a sniper rifle from a helicopter to shoot a hog, that's just regular people. That's just how they live. And when Ron DeSantis puts himself in a jet like he's Top Gun or something, that's just how regular people are, Jackson. I don't understand. That's not Hollywood or anything.
Yeah, no, not at all. Because again, these people, they're totally in line with reality, and we should take them seriously.
100%. Let's see, Kiddaboot Forever. Hey, Kiddaboot says Marjorie Taylor Beans is trying to defend him, but she isn't trying to help pay his fines. Some help she is, LOL. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think she's gonna be raising money for him necessarily. Okay, let's see. Stoneflower Dragon says Columbus was an exploiter for the Spanish Empire. Everything they did was deliberate. Good case to be made. The Bard says DJ Dick Pills is the dark branded version of DJ Lunchbox. Bust out the glow sticks. Jesus.
I like that DJ Dick Pills. It'd be funny because sometimes people will comment on my videos and call me DJ Dread. So I'm in the DJ club too.
There you go. Okay, let's see. Oh my God, I completely forgot. Do you realize that we're just a couple of days away from the launch of Unbossed with Nina Turner? It is coming next Monday. You can count it in hours at this point. I mean, I guess you always could have, but the number would have been really big. It's coming up soon. You're gonna be able to watch it on a daily basis. Nina Turner joined by an awesome rotating group of co-hosts, including myself next Tuesday. So definitely stay tuned for that. And if you want all the details about it, you can go to 2it.com/unbossed2it. Or if you want to save yourself a little bit of time, go to youtube.com/unbossed2it. You can subscribe. And what do you know? They're already putting out videos. You're missing them if you're not subscribed to Unbossed on YouTube. They're already going out there. You want to see what Nina Turner's thoughts are on the news happening every day? You already can. So let's head over there. By the way, they are still raising money through tyt.com/relief to provide some relief in the form of water testing kits, as well as actual shipments of water to Jackson. If you want to help contribute to that, you can go to tyt.com/relief and do a bunch of good for people who have been suffering for a good amount of time. And as is always the case, suffering in a way that initially made some news, but now a lot of people have moved on from it, but the need is still there, so don't forget it. Okay, with that, we got more news. Okay, everybody, let's jump into some more fun. Gary Chambers is not only a friend of the show, but also Senate candidate running in Louisiana. And throughout this race, he has had hit after hit when it comes to his ads. You remember when he went viral for smoking marijuana in a campaign ad? I don't think you're gonna forget that anytime soon. And by the way, totally proved right about the need to be a little bit more equitable on that topic, and Biden getting a bunch of credit now. So yes, he had that ad. That was followed up by an ad that actually showed a fictionalized version of a botched abortion, trying to give you an idea of what it's gonna look like in the future when Roe v. Wade is stripped away from more and more states, as well as, of course, him literally burning the Confederate flag in one of his ads. That was a personal favorite of mine. Well, now he's back to talk about Christopher Columbus and the substance-free, history-free adulation Christopher Columbus still gets. Take a look.
History repeats itself, especially when we lie about it.
And who's up next? Me. Come on up.
So it is wise for us to tell the truth.
My historical hero is Christopher Columbus.
Who do we allow our children to call their heroes?
In 1492, I set sail to find the continent of Asia. But instead, I stumbled upon a new land, or so I thought.
If we tell them that a ruthless conqueror was a great explorer,
surprise! There are already people there. So I pretended to be their friend. Wink, wink.
That murderers were respected leaders.
I killed as many as I could, with diseases that spread throughout the land.
And that thieves and enslavers were savvy businessmen.
Some I kept as servants. Others I sent to Europe as slaves. Well, at least the ones that survived.
Jeez, I always love Gary Chambers' performance in these ads, but that kid has a future because that was a great delivery there. And of course, as honest as all those details are and everything that was talked about in that ad did happen, that ain't the 10th part of the barbarous behavior that took place during that colonization. So Jackson, what do you think?
Well, I think that obviously he's very good at making ads, but one of the reasons he is because he tries to make people who stand for the, just the lied version of the history of America. He wants to make them angry as possible with it because of how he said it. You know what I'm saying, with the delivery, which is good because at the end of the day, like you said, that's really not a tenth of what happened because there was so much of a systemic process in how the entire eastern side of the world came over here. What happened to people, the tens of thousands of years of history that was here before that. And just, even if you don't want to talk about all that, like Christopher Columbus sailed over here with a boat full of rejects that society didn't want because it was like, oh, well, y'all might die trying to do this. So, go ahead and get on this boat. So that's the type of culture that they brought over. But I think one of the biggest key points with him and his effectiveness with ads, and I think he has a big future with it, is it's time to really shake these people up because it's like, what are you really mad about? Like,
yeah,
really? Like,
yeah, and they get mad. If you point out this stuff, they get mad. I tweet about it literally every year. They get so mad, and I don't understand it. If it makes you uncomfortable to know about the truth, take it up with the ghost of Christopher Columbus. Like, honestly, imagine if you found out that like an uncle of yours that you really like, 40 years ago, an employee of his said something he didn't like, so he cut off the employee's hands. That's your uncle. That's like someone you're more closely connected to, and it wasn't nearly as long ago. I feel like you'd still have to reevaluate your view of your uncle at that point, and that's just one person's hands, not tens of thousands, let alone the rape and the slavery and all that stuff. But for some reason, they feel more attached to a guy they've never met from 500 years ago and refuse to acknowledge the terrible things he did. By the way, bear in mind, they're perfectly willing to acknowledge the terrible things that other historic figures have done. Start a conversation about Genghis Khan with these people. They seem willing to talk about the barbarous behavior. And here's the thing, I bet Genghis Khan did some nice things from time to time, and yet we acknowledge the terrible mass murder and all that. It's so weird that they can't see that or refuse to see that they insist that if you did something that might be good, the consequences of it might be good, that anything else is allowed. We don't apply that to any people in the modern era, you'll know. So,
well, it just
great job, like Gary Chambers.
It hits home with the foundation of their identity, with their sense of identity. Because the idea that America is this place. Because you have to think, what's one of the main things that conservatives criticize the left for? Basically wanting to improve society. That's basically the crux of what their issue with the left is. And so, when you point out the truth that this land was taken over basically through the more barbaric parts of our human nature, that shakes up that idea. That means that there is something to improve here. That means that these issues are real. That means that you are not special. And so all of that goes on at a subconscious level, because otherwise, again, it's just the truth. So that's all that's really going on. Their identity's just being shaken up.
That's what it is, and that gets them every time. Okay, we're gonna move on to our E-block. We only have a few more minutes. Whenever you're ready, why don't we launch into this video?
I found something out, then I'm gonna end. I found something out, then I'm gonna end this. I found something out. My mom just told me that my grandmother was full-blood Cherokee. So I'm Native American. I was like, oh, hello. So I'm a super mutt. I don't know what I am. But this what was so funny. I said, Mom, why you never said anything to it?
Oh, I can answer that. Because it didn't happen and it's not true. That's why she didn't say anything about it. Does that help, Herschel Walker? That's why. It's not really funny though. It's weird. It's not the weirdest lie that you've told about yourself even recently. But it is one that even as he's telling it, surrounded by people who chose to go to a Herschel Walker rally So, their attachment to critical thinking and all that is a little bit tenuous. You'll notice they didn't cheer or anything. Like everyone in the crowd was like, why are you telling this to us? This seems really weird. Wait, don't we mock people that make these sorts of claims? And they are just claims, it's not true. The Cherokee Nation, the largest of 3 recognized tribes in the US, told HuffPost it had no record of Walker or anybody with this name in their database. Walker's mother, Christine, spoke to the Huffington Post and said she has no idea if an immediate ancestor was full-blooded Cherokee. Now she does say she had heard while growing up that her father's mother was kin to the tribe, but when asked, what do you mean kin to the tribe? She didn't know. But according to Herschel Walker, he just came up to her and told her this when she's not even making the claim. And he's been making claims of this sort for some time. Why he's choosing to do this bizarre Cherokee Hail Mary in the closing days of the campaign, I will not understand in the same way that I won't understand anything else about Herschel Walker. Jackson, what do you think?
Herschel is like literally the worst candidate in history. Like he literally doesn't know what's going on. Like he absolutely doesn't. And I just, as far as I know, the debate tomorrow isn't canceled, is it?
I haven't heard anything about it being canceled.
Yeah, I haven't either. And I can't miss it. I cannot miss it. I don't know where it's going to be streamed exactly, but I'm going to find out because that is going to be obviously Raphael's more prepared, but again, please just go after him. Just shake him up because it's not just that he's a bad candidate, but it is that he's a bad candidate. Shake him up.
I hope so. I mean, just let him talk. He always hurts himself.
Right.
The only issue is that Raphael Warnock is not a super aggressive guy. So I don't know how hard he's gonna go at him, but on some of these topics, I feel like you absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And finally, I will remind you, by the way, Herschel Walker, that now that you've made those claims, you better watch out. Because any day now, Donald Trump's gonna come at you. After all, he told us that he could revive the Pocahontas slur at any time. That he gleefully threw at Elizabeth Warren. You're making these claims now. God only knows what he's going to say about you or not, because he doesn't actually care and nothing needs to make any sense. Anyway, that's all the time we have for this first hour of the Damage Report. Thank you everyone on the linear platforms or on the podcast. I'd love to have you here. If you are on the other platforms, not Twitch today, but YouTube or the members app, those sorts of things, we're gonna be diving into a lot of other news in the aftermath. So don't go anywhere. Jackson and I will be back in just a few. Welcome back, everyone, to the Aftermath. I'm John Iadarola. Jackson White joins us. Jackson, always good to have you here.
Always good to be here, man. We always have a good time.
We do, and we're gonna continue to. Actually, we're gonna be talking about robots in just a minute. But first, I wanna read some of your comments out there. Bernie the Kiwi Dragon says, I hope Warnick drops the niceties at the debate. That's not an honorable opponent. That's a menace to society and needs to be treated as such. Yeah, we'll see. A lot is riding on it. Like, we're gonna get at least one truly awful person in the Senate. Like, I don't know if it's gonna be JD Vance or something, but Herschel Walker cannot be giving speeches on the Senate floor. That can't happen. Like, we can't. Come on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
man, we gotta do better.
Yeah. David Moore says, John, you made garbage person way too difficult this week. Well, the world did. Yeah, there's been quite a few. Wait, hold on. Bart Kyle says, Genghis Khan, fun fact, nice thing, created the first international postal system. I think that fact would make Kevin Costner smile. Thank you. Well, if he created a postal system, then the fact that he supposedly would kill everyone in a city and make a pyramid out of their skulls, I mean, that's really not that bad then. Honestly, why are you pointing that out, you woke mob? Anyway, okay, with that, why don't we jump into some news, starting with this.
Fetterman uses a software program to understand the words of those around him and to formulate his responses to those words. In other words, to talk. Now, to be perfectly clear, this software is not a hearing aid. Fetterman doesn't need a hearing aid because he isn't deaf. He's not hearing impaired. Instead, this program takes words and then rearranges them into language that John Fetterman can understand because his brain can no longer do that for him. Now, that's sad for transhumanists, though. It is thrilling. This is an amazing moment. This is Neil Armstrong on the moon. Here you have one of the most famous politicians in the country merging with a computer. This is the future they imagine. They're thrilled by it. But for everyone else, for the voters of Pennsylvania, for example, it does raise some obvious questions. For example, where exactly does the software end and John Fetterman's consciousness begin? We don't know. We can't know. But it's obvious that Pennsylvania could very well be sending a computer program to the US Senate where inevitably it will be hacked. Yesterday, MSNBC sat down with John Fetterman and his thinking machine to assess where the man ends and the machine begins. And the initial impressions were not at all encouraging.
Yeah. None of that is true. None of that is based in literally anything. Tucker Carlson, in his quest to destroy an outsider candidate that he disagrees with, even though he pretends to be a populist or whatever, to support a multi-millionaire, even though he pretends to be a man of the person, is completely whole cloth making up nonsense about John Fetterman just to destroy him. Knowingly, intentionally sitting down with his production team and saying, we don't want to talk about what positions John Fetterman has taken because the progressive ones are popular, and even the ones that he have are a little bit more conservative. We don't want to let people know that we actually support that. And so what can we say? Well, he had a stroke and he uses a voice to text program now, and that's not good enough because we don't want to look anti-disabled or anything. He doesn't have a brain and a robot does all his thinking for him. Yeah, we'll go with that. Like, that was on Fox News, okay? And Tucker Carlson's wearing a tie. And in theory, he's been in the media for a while. All of that set dressing might delude you into thinking that what you just saw was anything other than an Alex Jones segment. That was all it was. He took the news, decided it didn't work for his narrative, and just came up with a whole cloth, nonsensical lie about the program that John Fetterman uses to read spoken text. Now, while doing that, of course, it's a massive insult to literally anyone who has a hearing impediment of any sort, anyone who might use some sort of program like that, but he doesn't give a damn. He's not interested in whether he might be insulting millions of people in that way. The goal is to destroy John Fetterman. The goal is to keep millionaires in power who will keep his taxes low, and that's it. And if he has spin fantasies about cyborgs or robots or whatever, that's how he's gonna do it. Jackson, what do you think?
Well, again, like we pointed out earlier, this is what his audience eats up entirely. And this matches too, along with, I'm sure you've seen like the people running for governor. I think it was in Colorado. They're talking about furries and people being in schools and having litter boxes in classrooms. Obviously because it all fits perfectly into just the transphobic propaganda. So it's all within that same narrative. It's all within that same space. Because as we know, they're not going to focus on anything that matters because the GOP, like you said, Tucker Carlson, a man of the people, a populist, a trust fund baby, a populist, and, the GOP being an inherently classist, racist organization. Everything has been shoved down the throats of the GOP. And, so that the narrative just fits perfectly. His audience, they think it's hilarious. And you better believe that they're going around saying that to people and talking that mess in the coffee shops and everything.
Yeah. It's just like we talked about the slurs against John Fetterman yesterday. And I thought that was as bad as it could get, but this is so intentionally worse. And there's one other aspect to this that a lot of people noticed. I want to demonstrate it though for you. We're gonna act out an important point that people might be missing about this. Do you want to know something that a lot of people can do that Tucker Carlson can't do? You want to know something that I can do that Tucker Carlson can't do? I'm gonna demonstrate it for you. I'm gonna continue to do my show despite the fact that I'm not reading literally everything I say off of a teleprompter. I can tell you that Tucker Carlson is a partisan hack who's trying to pretend that he's a man of the people when he lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion of which he owns multiple. And his goal here is just to keep enough Republicans in charge that they can either pass further tax cuts or obstruct the Biden agenda enough that things get really bad and we elect a Ron DeSantis or something like that so they can pass trillions of dollars more in tax cuts. Now, you'll notice I was able to say that without reading it directly off of a teleprompter, which that entire segment, as every segment of Tucker Carlson's was written for him. Now, that's pretty much by the numbers. Most cable hosts do use a teleprompter, but most cable hosts don't imply that someone using some sort of text-based robotic aid makes them a transhumanist that's really suspicious all of a sudden. So John Fetterman has other people's words turned into text that he can read and then he just talks. You literally say whatever the robot tells you to say, Tucker Carlson. You require way more assistance. Can you imagine what Tucker Carlson would do if the teleprompter broke? He would have to cut to commercial immediately because he'd have no idea what he should say. So you want to slur John Fetterman as requiring some sort of AI assistance? Your ability to do your job in the ridiculously boring way that you can't even now is 100% contingent on technology. Can you imagine if we were to hack his teleprompter, what we could get Tucker Carlson to say? Maybe we could get him to say the things that he always really wants to say but can't say on TV. Jackson, what do you think?
We can hack the teleprompter and do a Ron Burgundy. You know what I'm saying? Just get him to say absolutely anything. Just somebody needs to hack Fox News' teleprompter and do like a Bruce Almighty. You know what I'm saying? and just have him go crazy. But yeah, no, I mean it definitely. I mean Tucker Carlson, which all kind of really fits into just his general disdain of people in general. He's talentless, as you insinuated. Tucker Carlson has no talent. If the teleprompter went off, what would he say? What does he really believe in? You're saying this mess about John Fetterman, when in reality, Dr. Oz is really just in reality a right-wing liberal, posing as a Republican. I mean, he would fit right in. Dr. Oz would fit right into a corporate Democratic position. Honestly, that probably would have been a better lane for him to run in. He would fit in there pretty well. So it's
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right.
Yeah, so and he would be able to kind of more openly, because a lot of the kind of stupid takes and pivots that he had was him trying to fit into the base. Not to say that he was a good candidate before that, but the signaling, he wouldn't have had to do that at all in the Democratic Party.
That's true.
So he would have fit. And that's who Tucker Carlson is protecting. So again, he has no talent and he has no real fundamental belief system. He's just a rich jackass.
Yeah. And by the way, this is such a dodge too, because he would have you believe that we don't want politicians who follow programming. But he is perfectly fine with politicians who follow programming. He doesn't want it coming from a computer program. He wants it coming from wealthy donors. You think Dr. Oz is like considering a crisis of inflation and he's sitting down surrounded by books and scholars and he's thinking through what he should do, how he should vote? No, he takes his programming from the donors. The donors tell him, you will do this or you won't do this. That's it. That's it. Input and output. That's all it is. Anyway, we're gonna turn to something else in just a sec. But first, let's read a few of your comments. Adrian Vixen, awesome member of the community, says, I have sensory processing disorder. It does not reflect intellect. I am still able to mod the heck out of the chat every day. Screw ableism, 100%. Hate seeing it normalized in this way. All with the goal of just destroying someone that they believe to be progressive or whatever. Jay says, Tucker's a sorry excuse for a person, 100%, thank you. Thomas H. Sear says, transhumans like pacemakers. Oh no, he wouldn't trust John Fetterman if he had a pacemaker either. Let's see, Not Human Humanist says, if a talking garbage can has a show, why not a transhuman in a Senate? 100%, I love it. Okay, let's jump into maybe a topic that might calm me down a little bit.
Back on the pot issue, if you want to legalize this on the federal level, I would suggest the lawmakers in Washington, D.C. come to my neighborhood first.
Yeah.
And say, is this what you want all of America to be? Because you'll get a contact high going to the coffee shop.
Oh, it is insane. In New York right now,
Yes.
a cop stopped me on the way to work this morning. He's like, you smoking weed? I was like, no. He's like, well, here you go then. Handed me a dime bag. No, I'm kidding. It's everywhere, okay? It's everywhere you go. And the quality of life deterioration that comes with it is what nobody talks about. Yeah, it's just weed. It's not quite heroin. It's not quite fentanyl. I understand. But there's an overall decay in the neighborhood, almost similar to like broken windows policing. When you start with a lowered standard, you see everything around it increase exponentially. And that's what pot has brought. It's just filthy laziness. And I'm not a fan, Hemmer.
There's no shortage of rich dumbasses on TV that have no idea what country they live in. They have no idea what people's lives are actually like. They put on their suit, they make their little jokes, they collect their massive paychecks, and that's it. They basically live on another planet. They have no idea what it is they're talking about. Weed isn't quite as bad as fentanyl, but it destroys neighborhoods. Well, God, we shouldn't legalize it, Jackson. I mean, then people might start smoking it. Since we live in a country right now where basically nobody does, thank God. Jackson, what do you think?
Well, I have a lot to say about this because, first and foremost, the United States is the most drug-consuming country on the planet. And I don't mind saying this publicly, I spent a large part of my young adulthood selling drugs. And I smoke weed. I've done a decent amount of drugs just recreationally. And not just because of my experience in the game doing that, but drugs are everywhere. Not just weed, but you think that those rich white men in that studio, if not themselves, don't have colleagues who put cocaine up their nose every day. It's some of the best scripts, some of the best works that any of us have ever seen were produced by people who are high off of cocaine. And that's the truth. And so again, and it's not just people who just consume products all the time. Any of us can go to the store. Many of us, if not you, I know Brett definitely on his fridge has enough alcohol to kill himself on a daily basis. Brett has enough alcohol in his, but that's the reality of it, right? But because addiction typically stems more from people who have like issues in their life. I mean, substances can be addictive, but we know that legally people are taking opioids. So it's ridiculous. It's a bunch of nonsense. And ironically, it's completely against what conservative principles are supposed to be, because they're always talking about freedom, but their solution to everything is just make society more punitive. And what does that do? It makes it more classist.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's just insane. Like I was telling our production meeting, like there are businesses where the entire business model, you can go in there in any city in America, and it is just full of drunk people getting drunk, paying money to get drunk, and they can get super drunk. super drunk is sometimes they fight, and sometimes they throw up on the floor, and sometimes they pee their pants. And that's just a normal day at the business. And there's tens of thousands of these across America, and they're perfectly fine with that. They're perfectly fine with their friends who do coke. They're perfectly fine with their friends who can't get through a night without Chardonnay. They're perfectly fine with that because that's what they consume. The stuff that you might consume or want to consume, not only do they not like it, but they will literally ban you from consuming. Isn't that insane? Like if you were to propose banning a certain size soda, they freak out. How dare you? You should be able to put whatever you want in your body. Oh no, not that plant. Not that plant that grows quite naturally. You're not allowed to put that in your body. It's ridiculous. Thankfully, people don't support them. 3 in 5 voters say marijuana should be legal nationwide. And when it is, then you can truly decide for yourself. Right now, a lot of people still can't.
Yeah, man, because the more expensive wines and the things like cocaine and stuff, that's an expensive taste. So, there's a totally different stigma to it. So it's ridiculous.
Totally. Okay, in 1 minute, we're gonna move on to our last topic. We're gonna move on to that H block. I just wanna read a couple of comments first. Let's see. I feel like whoever's stuck in the dock is putting the same thing in many times. But Snack Panther, thank you for being here, much appreciated. Next TYT reporter, I think talking about Alex Jones, says he had his audience members peeing on the graves of the children. He's so disgusting. Yeah, and so we have a segment called Garbage People, where we point out people who are garbage, okay? Imagine if I was to put someone in the garbage can and then I were to find out that a bunch of our viewers were harassing that person so much that they had to move. And then I said, I don't care. And then next week I did Garbage People again, and then that person got harassed out of their home. And then I did it again the next week and the next week. And I did that for literally years so that I can make money. Wouldn't that be kind of a problem? Wouldn't you think less of me? Like, just doing it isn't an issue necessarily, but when you know the effects of what you're doing and you choose to do it for profit, like rational, like compassionate people don't operate in that way. Anyway, let's move on to other news. A former Starbucks manager in the Buffalo area has testified that they were provided with and instructed to use by higher ups a list of pro-union employees that should be disciplined and effectively driven out of the company. You can find a lot more information about this. Vice has a write-up which you can see right here, but we're gonna provide you the details so you understand another facet of the anti-union push from Starbucks and other companies like it. This is David Almond, Buffalo area manager who resigned from the company in January, testified during an August National Labor Relations Board hearing that managers who were sent to his store after the union effort went public, read him a list of pro-union employees. In one case, he was encouraged by a district manager to go through the files of a longtime employee to target her with disciplinary action. So it was disciplinary action that was so necessary that they didn't have anything to do it on, and they had to dig through the records to try to come up with something to way after the fact discipline her for. That's how serious it was. No, but what's serious about this, of course, is that even though these companies will occasionally say that we're not like fundamentally against it or whatever, when they're powerful, when there's a lot of money on the line, this is the sort of stuff they'll do. They'll shut down stores, they'll make it more difficult for you to get enough hours to actually be able to live, and they will try to drive people out if they feel like they're working towards unionization. Jackson, what do you think?
Yeah, again, I think one of the things we pointed out earlier is when unions were stronger in this country, when the working class was more together, there was less of an ability for management and there was less of an ability for people at the higher end of society who basically just suck all the resources up to put their foot down because logically, it doesn't really make sense logically, it does make sense to be against unions and unionization if you are classist and want to hoard all the management power. But again, that's all that is, and it's really just a bunch of mess. And I'm from Missouri, so that's been a right to work state for quite some time. And we see these types of policies just completely gut and destroy unions for no real benefit to the working class whatsoever. So, there's no arguing that that approach is just. So we need to continue to fight for unionization.
Yeah, and thankfully, look, people's approval nationwide of unions has been trending up. which is amazing considering that we've experienced literally decades of the only messaging you hear about unions in the media is negative. It's from the point of view of corporations, it's serving the interests of CEOs, and yet people still are starting to once again be interested in unions. And of course, they're gonna fight against that. I mean, look, there's more than 30 complaints against Starbucks filed with the National Labor Relations Board, despite them saying they're not targeting pro-union workers. They ruled just on Wednesday that Starbucks violated federal law in Kansas and Missouri, both for firing employees based on their position on unions, as well as asking police to take part in breaking up protests. Howard Schultz, by the way, says that unionization is a dire threat to Starbucks, and he's not anti-union, but he's just pro-Starbucks, I guess. Okay. The ridiculous thing, of course, is that the politicians who passed the sort of laws that Jackson was talking about there will always say that they're on the side of workers, and they've convinced many workers that it's true. We're talking about a lot of Democrats and basically every single Republican in the country actively passing laws to make it easier for corporations to put their boot on the neck of workers, and then turning around and saying that they're the ones that have the workers back. And that would not work. You would not be able to manage that con unless you had the media working on your behalf in demonizing unions and making people so suspicious of them.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's not like if unions were stronger in Starbucks, people would have less of a need to satisfy their caffeine addiction. You know what I mean? So that their sales would not be impacted whatsoever by people who were happier to show up to work that day. So.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for our show today. Jackson, as always, great to have you here. Where can people see more of your work?
Oh yeah, more of my work's on Rebel HQ. Follow me on Twitter at SlimFitChacho. I got a podcast. I tweet links out there. It's always good to be here with you, John. Yeah, like you said, an hour and a half just zoomed by. I'm like, oh my God.
I know, it did go by fast.
Man, yeah, but I had a great time. It's always good to be here with you.
Thank you. Me too. Great to have you here. Everyone go check out Rebel HQ. You can see Jackson fighting with the red pillars. That's gotta be a lot of fun. For now, though, we are gonna have to close out our show. Although you do have a bit of homework, it is that time to prep for our chore where we throw away the garbage people of the week. You can head over to the community tab at youtube.com/The Damage Report and vote for your community garbage person of the week. And tomorrow, Jessica Burbank and I will be revealing our garbage people. So I hope that you join us there. On Twitch, I am going to be live streaming my response to the January 6 hearings. That's gonna be starting in 34 minutes. Right now, Jessica Burbank is over there. But you also have Indisputable coming up in just a few minutes, so don't go anywhere. For now, though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there. I'll see you soon.